My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today, the biggest thing I can do to help you make that happen is to give you the overall update for what's going across all of Alaska. Okay, and this is looking at Anchorage, MatSu Valley, Kenai, Peninsula, Fairbanks, just looking at all the big markets that are here in the area and talking about what we're seeing as far as the residential side goes. This continues to be a pretty easy market. I am anecdotally starting to feel that the market is shifting. We'll talk more about that in the summary. But before we get started though, if you haven't done so already, do give this video a like. If you haven't done so already, do subscribe. And without further ado, let's go and jump into today's market update. Now, the first thing we need to check out is what's going on in the residential market over in Anchorage, because Anchorage is by and large the biggest market in the entire state of Alaska, not just South Central, but the entire state. So what we're seeing is that there's actually continues to be a pretty steep decrease in the overall inventory that's available in Anchorage compared to this time last year, which is saying something because it was a compressed inventory back then. So what we're seeing is that this time last year there was about 613 homes were on the market. This year we're seeing there's about 340. So you're seeing almost cut in half inventory availability of what we had this time last year compared to this year. So that's number one, inventory is way down in Anchorage. The second thing we need to check out is what's going on as far as the units that have actually sold compared to this time last year to this year. So what we're seeing is that this time last year we had roughly about 200 homes that sold, about 198. This year we're seeing that we actually had about 311 homes sold in this market, and that's obviously about a 33% increase when the inventory's pretty much been cut in half. So that would really explain the next little piece here, which is going to be the average sold price. Now over here, what we're seeing is probably the part that most people are actually interested in, and that is that we're seeing the average sold price has gone up by about 6.41%. There we go, got it right, year to date. So what that means is across the board, this time last year, people were on average getting about 397,000. This year, it's a lot closer to about 422,000. So across the board, we're seeing people are getting more for their homes than they did this time last year. The next market we're going to check out is going to be the Kenai Peninsula. So over here, again, we're seeing inventory is really getting cut down, roughly about a third or a half of where it was the year before. So across the board, Kenai Peninsula, inventory is pretty low. Again, though, what we're seeing is very similar to Anchorage, is that even though less homes are on the market, we still see about a doubling of the properties that have actually sold, because over here we see that roughly 50, I think it's 46 exactly, homes sold this past month, whereas this time last year, whereas this month it's 81. So almost a doubling of the properties that have actually sold, even though inventory's pretty much been cut in half. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the average sold price for properties in the Kenai Peninsula. So over here, what we're seeing, this looks great. We are seeing an increase of the average sold price by $275. Now it's going up to roughly about $282, so that sounds really good. But what I am seeing, though, is that year over date, compared to the overall average for the past couple of years, we're actually seeing a slowdown for what we're seeing for the average sold price. Yes, it's still increasing, but the rate at which it's increasing has slowed down a little bit. Because you see, in past years, it's been somewhere closer to about 4. I think previous year was like 6.3%, if I recall correctly. This year, we're seeing it being a lot closer to about, I think it's 2.7, if I recall correctly. So still increasing. It's just the rate at which it is starting to slow down in the Kenai Peninsula. Next market we need to check out is what's going on in the MatSu Valley. So this continues to be a very, very volatile, very fast-moving market. As we can see over here, inventory definitely been cut down by about a third. There was about 571 properties that were available this time last year. Now it's about 291. So huge cut in inventory across the board in the MatSu Valley. So what we're seeing over here for the number of properties that have actually sold, though, is that even though with other markets we are seeing that they had way more units as sold, we're seeing an uptick in the MatSu Valley, not proportionately, not as big as we saw with the others. It still went from roughly about 160 properties that sold this time last year. This year was just shy of 200. So it still is an increase, just not by as much as what we saw with other markets. So what we see over here for the MatSu Valley is probably one of the most dramatic price, like year over dates, of what we're seeing across the entire state of Alaska. And that is that the average sold price has actually increased by over 12%. I think it's 12.2 or 12.19 if we're getting really specific. So we're definitely seeing an increase, though. And it went from about 301, 302 this time last year to now it's sitting closer to about 300, 337,000. So pretty sizable uptick, and we'll talk about why that is in the summary. Let's take a quick break here. So if you are looking at moving up to Alaska, you have a lot of questions, but I actually do answer a lot of those questions in my relocation guide, which you can download for free. Make sure that you download that. The link for that is going to be down below. Just make sure when you register for the site I'll be sending you to, it's my website. Just make sure you indicate on there, relocation guide in the comment section, and I'll make sure to send you off a free copy of your very own relocation guide for what it's like moving up to Alaska. Now, without further ado, let's jump into Fairbanks and see how that market's doing. All right, Fairbanks. I actually really enjoy doing y'all's market updates just because they're so dramatic proportionally. But what we see over here is this time last year we had just over 100 properties that were on the market. This year, 32 for the entire market of Fairbanks, when you have a lot of people that are going to be moving up there for Eielson Air Force Base. I'm going to let you guess, is that increasing the price, decreasing? Now for the number of properties that have actually sold this time this year. This will help you with your prediction on the average sold price. But we sold 28 properties this time last year, and we sold 28 this year. So literally neck and neck with what the production was last year. Now for the big question, how much has the average sold price increased? So what we see over here, it has in fact gone up 14.74% year over date. So that's pretty sizable because it was about 251. Now it's roughly about 288. So that's biggest increase across the entire state is what we've seen is in Fairbanks. It's really small market though. So it's kind of, these numbers can really fluctuate a lot more violently than we would with regular markets. All right, let's go and summarize everything now. Across the board in Alaska, we're seeing that the inventory is down. It still continues to be pretty low. Now, it kind of varies from market to market, and it's going to really be felt in kind of the smaller markets much more than it might be in somewhere like Anchorage or the MatSu Valley, but that still definitely is the case. Looking specifically at average sold price across the board, yeah, it's definitely up. That is what we would expect, though, for interest rates being as low as they are. It is just a natural byproduct. If the average interest rate is a lot lower, well, guess what? Then average sold price is going to go up proportionally, usually for that amount. So that's what we're seeing across the board as far as the average sold price. We're talking about units sold. Then, yeah, it's usually up or the same as it was the year before, which if you have kind of a smaller inventory, maintaining what we did the year before is actually huge uptick in the demand. So that's really the big takeaway here. Demand does remain pretty high. Average sold price continues to go up, and we are seeing inventory continues to be pretty low. Is this going to maintain like this? I really don't think so. Anecdotally, I am seeing signs that the market is actually softening up where I specialize in the South Central Alaska. So in the Anchorage, Shugiak, Eagle River, Girdwood, Wasilla, Palmer, everything in South Central, I'm seeing signs that the market is starting to soften up a little bit. And it's probably something where it's not going to get reflected in the statistics until later. But what we are seeing is just properties that would have just gone instantly before are taking it a little bit longer now. And they're not getting as many offers as they got before. Still getting multiple offers, just not as many. So if you're a buyer, man, still a good market to jump into. Interest rates are low, and that definitely does help everybody as long as you don't overpay. Okay, don't get into these games of, you know, I'll pay $5,000 over whatever the appraised value is, blah 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 blah. Do not do that. Okay, that's how you get markets like California, where somebody just hiccups and the market just goes belly up because everybody's upside down on their mortgages. So don't do that. That's not setting you up for success. If you're looking at selling and you've been on the fence and just waiting for something here, you're probably not going to get any better time than right now. So give me a call and let's make it happen. If you are trying to get in contact with me, do make sure you do so through my Facebook page. The link for that is going to be down below. I'm able to answer those a lot more than people who reach out and email me. I do my best, but I do have nearly 14,000 unanswered emails in my inbox, and that number just keeps going up as I try to keep up with the many things that are coming my way and trying to prioritize them. So Facebook is going to be the best way to do it, and I sure hope this was useful, and we'll see you next time.